actually means in any context you do very well. And that somehow needs to be imparted. One. Second, of course, is that, and this is a point that I heard earlier, and I hear it all the time, so is whether you enter an organization and be on the chief, and be on to become the chief strategy officer on day one is something whether it's the right strategy to actually have to begin with. I think, and this education somehow has to teach you the value of humility more than anything else as you enter your working lives. Because what humility does to you is also to give you the power to accept mistakes when they happen from time to time. Most people fail because they fail to realize when they've made a mistake, and they make more mistakes as opposed to apologizing for a mistake they've made. And that's something that doesn't come to us easily. We don't like to accept our mistakes, but it is a key value that business leaders must have, the power to accept mistakes. The third thing is to be able to go to any length to get whatever you need to get done, to any length. Which means that you can't ever sit back and say, if I don't get this, I can't do my work. The problem is, or the solution could be, have you gone out looking for what you need to get your work done? And that is not something that people, that the younger lot actually do, because somehow I believe, and I'm sorry I'm making a sweeping generalization, but there is a belief that everything's come easy, and therefore you continue to do that. But that idea that everything comes easy changes quite dramatically the moment you enter a company, an organization, any place you go, any career you choose. Nothing will come easy. So therefore, these are three fundamental qualities, I think, and I will someday find a way of testing this to some level of degree of certainty if I do end up going to campuses, and to see whether this is there. But if there's any way that you can find of imparting these three qualities, I think it'd be a great, great start.
That's interesting. I'll take Animesh's view on this, and then I'll raise a second issue.
I think most of the points I would have liked to raise have been covered by the panelists, but just to just develop on those points, issue of humility, of course, it can be developed in the campus itself, as you were saying. There's a big chance that if we develop the feeling that you are not the ultimate, let us say, character in this world, those things do help, but how to do it? It's not that one subject can offer you, it's not that perhaps one experience can offer you, it's a it's an ongoing process which will go and continue for 2 years. It's not just a B school, wherever you studied, that humility that I am perhaps accountable to somebody, and I am perhaps equal of others, not better than them. It's a mindset. Mindset takes its own time to develop. And of course, B schools definitely need to do something about it, because, as I said, the merit system is attuned that way that we are supposed to believe that we are the best. Accepting that, okay, others are also equally good, if not the best. It takes its own time. And then there is a pecking order I have to be prepared for, that where I'm in junior in the pecking order, that one has to be prepared for. And the important lesson again is, when we are thinking of a job, are we clear what kind of job we want? It can very well be that you are so individually determined and you are so clear about your goals of pure challenge or something like that, that maybe a job in a brand doesn't matter for you. Maybe a Deloitte or a KPMG may not be important for you at all, because you are so individually driven. You are something in what we in career anchors call somebody from entrepreneurial streak or a pure challenge streak. So we have to, perhaps as students also, people have to soul search what kind of job we want. Is it a job which will just give me money or a brand, or is it a job where I'll feel satisfied? Because after all, once you enter and there is this realization that this is not what I wanted, that has its own hardbacks. In fact, most B schools say that it's the first 6 months that most of the people tend to have the highest attrition. Because you were not prepared for this job. You thought that you were meant for something else. So it's not just the B school, it's not just the company, but also the individual has to think, what do I want? And of course, partly of course there is help available. There are psychometric tests and many of the ways that you can actually determine where you stand. There is also a thinking process which has to start maybe in the first year of MBA itself. Where do I want to be? When you are in job, have I planned my career further? Does this organization or does this profile help my career? So it's a combination of organization, your previous institute, and you yourself, perhaps, which will have an answer. Do I fit in and adapt? Or is it that fitting and adapting is not something like my cup of tea?
Thank you very much. Let me take two cues from this. I think Vishnu, you insisted on the idea of collaboration, which is very important, and you insisted on the idea of a quality of a leader called humility, which is very important. Okay. Let me take you, transport, and ask a question to both of my industry colleagues. Assuming that the faculty or the B school people who are sitting here are a bunch of dumb fools who don't know how to do that. Okay. Under that assumption, let me transport you to be people who are sitting across now. If you are a management student back here, okay, how would you do it without the help of any of this faculty or any of these institutions? Assuming that you are one of those high flyers, can you architect? Okay, I again say that, take the schools and the faculty as dumb, and you are there sitting other way, how will you do it all over again? That's my question. I'll ask for the collaborative view first and take on how that leadership can actually do it. What can you do to yourself without any support from the system? System of the education. That's how I want to really question that issue.
See, as I said before, right, I think culturally we are in tune to look into ourselves more. So I don't think all of us don't do that over here. I see a lot of you over here while I was roaming around the campus as well. Like, I definitely see there is a lot of collaborative effort within yourselves. But does that, when in an organization, what happens is, there is no such term called friendship. It is only trustworthy relationships which exist in an organization. So when it's a movement from a friendship to a trustworthy relationship, right? There is a lot of unlearning or learning you need to do in terms of how you are able to be that open to share, how transparent you are, to give information to others so that they can help you or you in turn can help them to mutually get more successful, right? So that's where I'd see it already happening, but how would you change your mindset is what will make you more successful or less successful. So I don't think I can suggest any more strategies. I'm sure you guys are smart enough and you do it yourselves, right? There are a lot of collaborative programs which you are running, a lot of clubs you are running by yourself. So this is already ingrained in you, in your institution. So that's a good part. So all you need to do is probably how to down your guard and then let in, right? So that is more important.
I think, and this may sound really cheesy, but what you've got to do, and I think I build on this point of humility because I think it's very important. Let's just talk brass tacks, okay? I don't want to give you any theory. This is what you have to do. You're going to be hired by a firm to do a particular job that they want you to do, okay? And they have very clear expectations about what they expect out of you. Now, the first question you've got to ask yourself, are you willing to work in a setup where you are only to be constrained by what is expected out of you, nothing more? Does that go with you? Because that's the bedrock of humility. Are you willing to play along? Answer yes, great. Answer no, you're a misfit. Ask yourself that one question. Second, and that is equally important, once you've accepted that you will play along, are you wishing for results? Do you want a promotion every year? Do you want to be a billionaire by the time you're 30? Ask yourself that question. Are you willing to do whatever it takes? Second principle of being humble. Are you willing to do whatever it takes? Third, if you're willing to do whatever it takes, are you willing to not take shortcuts? Which is to say, accept a bribe, pay a bribe, be corrupt to achieve whatever you want to achieve. If you think your ethics can be compromised, that is not a sign of humility. In fact, that's arrogance. Okay? So you have to also ask yourself that question. Are you willing to be compromised, to do whatever it takes? Third, that was the third point. Fourth, are you willing to be diffident? Which means, are you willing to be less confident than it requires from time to time? Today, the attrition across the industries is high only because people think and they believe that for a few rupees more, they can compromise with every value that you should hold dear. Okay, so and the reason why I say it's a confidence problem is because people are confident enough of finding roles that give them few rupees more. So are you willing to be diffident, to say no matter what happens, I will hack it in here, and I will make a success of my job, or whatever I'm given to do. And that actually solves two very critical things, and that's the topic of our discussion today, adaptation of free rein. If you're willing to adapt for the first few months or years of your life, you can have a free rein forever. Because your mindset would have changed so dramatically that you don't need to even ask yourself whether I'm adapting or am I a free bird. But in my view, and I hold this very strongly, you've got to be able to adapt to have a free rein. And I'll give you an example, and this is so wonderful that it has coincided with today. Rajiv Bansal is taking over as the Chief Financial Officer of Infosys Technologies. Rajiv Bansal is 39 years old. And he's the CFO of a multi-billion-dollar business. He's an extremely dear friend. We've spent many, many lunches and dinners and beers together. And when I look at him, I see an example of an exemplary individual who adapted for the first 15 years of his life in Infosys, and now he's the CFO, and he has a free rein, and he's still 39. Brilliant example. Another example I will give you is that of Barkha Dutt, my current organization. Many people have very extreme views about Barkha. Some think she's a Looney Tune. Yeah, fine, you're entitled to your opinion, she's a public figure. Some think she's an outstanding journalist. Let me tell you this, she's the #1 journalist in this country. But if you look at, we have a film in NDTV, it's called The Fly on the Wall. And in that you have 3 people together in a newsroom, and these 3 people are Rajdeep Sardesai, Arnab Goswami, and Barkha Dutt. All of them were NDTV at one point. And Barkha says something to which Rajdeep says, Barkha, just shut up and let me do my work. We can tackle this on Monday. Can you imagine Barkha taking that from Rajdeep Sardesai with Arnab present? Now that is Barkha adapting for the first 10 years of her life in NDTV, and now she has a free rein. She's a professor, a chaired professor at Brown University, and she's taking classes there now. She's doing what she wants to do with her life. All right, so therefore, you've got to be, if you are going down a path, then you know that it will come to you. You've got to be patient and humble enough to begin with before you take on the cloak of arrogance, which people adopt, which is fine. But that's how you start, and that's what will take you to. That's my practitioner's view.
Okay. I have one question to you. You said about the increasing cross-sector movement that is taking place, for career progression.
Yes.
How would, what are the skills that these people should have? First question, when you join for a cross-sector movement. And the second question is that, do you necessarily have to orchestrate the cross-sector movement to make a further career progression? Is it one of the things they should really think about?
I think it's a great question, and let me take another example. I think examples resonate with people more. There's a good friend of mine. His name is Salil Shetty. Do any of you know Salil Shetty at all? He's a superstar, by the way, and I find it surprising none of you know him. Salil Shetty rings a bell. No, he's definitely not a choreographer. So, okay, let me end the suspense anyway. Some of you might just Google it on the fly and tell me. So, Salil Shetty is the Secretary General of Amnesty International. You know Amnesty? Excellent, thank God. Okay. So he's a good friend, and he was introduced to me many, many years ago by another good friend, and since then we've kept in touch. He lives in the UK, and he runs Amnesty from there because Amnesty is based in the UK. And he's trying to hire a lot of people, and I'm helping him do that. And he says, you know, Gagan, I face such a huge problem because anyone I want to hire is all there in the for-profit sector, and we are a not-for-profit sector, and therefore these people won't come to us. So I said, you're looking at this all wrong. You're not looking at sectors, you're looking at people. So don't give out a job description on your website, for God's sakes. Don't say what this person will do. If you say, I need a CIO for Amnesty, that's enough. But what is it that you need in this person? First, don't expect a salary. If you're willing to work on a consultancy basis, this is a job for you. If you are willing to devote your life to humanity, this is the job for you. You've got to put down the 4 or the 5 things that are most important for somebody to succeed in Amnesty, and that's what you've got to put down on your website, not what the CIO will do, because everybody knows what a CIO does anyway. That's one. So therefore, the point I'm trying to drive at is that cross-sectoral movements are very person-dependent. You can't expect to have a strategy for allowing crossover movements. These are people's individual choices. And people make them because they think they have a larger purpose in life they want to serve. And you've got to be able to seek out these people. When somebody moves from not-for-profit to profit, and I know of several such people who've done that, they think at some point in time they've done enough, and now they need to live life for themselves. They become very individualistic, which is fine, you know, because we are humans, there is end to our altruism. And so therefore, people want to make money after some point, and they do. So therefore, it's impossible to have a strategy for cross-sectoral movements, but what you've got to be able to do, what companies are doing now, is to define very clearly what they need in a particular person and not the job. Because the job is easily understood. And therefore, the young people here who are entering, and this is the point I made right in the beginning, a lot of us don't spend the time in introspecting what is it that will make us truly happy. I'd rather be a cook, all right? I love cooking. But that's not the career I've chosen because, I don't know, maybe I don't like chopping onions. I'll take it on after that. So, but that means I like doing this more. So there's a little bit of introspection that we must do, which we don't do enough of. And that's why you would find that, and please, for heaven's sake, think whether you're sleepwalking through this, whether you're thinking a management education is a ticket and therefore it can be used anywhere, or sorry, a passbook on iOS 6 now, that can be used anywhere. But unfortunately, you will find to your dismay that it is not. So that introspection is important to begin with.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Vishnu, which is actually taking in on from the idea of collaboration and the story that you told about the lady. Do you find that high performers, they find it very difficult to delegate? I'm asking this question primarily because it could happen that there could be high performers among these people. They got group tasks, but they can't delegate. They want to do everything by themselves. Okay, if at all they delegate, it is because they are too overloaded, and then therefore they have to dump. That is not delegation. Dumping, of course, is inevitable, because when you got too much of work, you can't. So you dump the job on the other people, which is very distinguished from delegation, which I consider as a deliberate action of passing on your some of your powers for the other person to do. Okay. Do you find it? I mean, have you come across incidences, or do you really find it to be very difficult for high performers to delegate? It's a simple question.
Yes and no,
Okay.
both, right? Some people feel really passionate about what they are doing, right? And they want to do it end to end. And they generally are, as Gagan pointed out, right? Like when you are so passionate about something, you will become extra cautious that you don't want something to go wrong. And you will go to such an extent that you would either become a micromanager or a person who is breathing down somebody's neck, or you would end up doing it yourself. So both the things are wrong. You need to get a fine balance where often I see that there is no fine balance, but you need to get a fine balance where you are able to do certain things right, guide people wherever they're going wrong, and then collaborate with them to get things on a platter, right? A complete show, which is good. So coming back to the point, yes, I do think some people have an issue in delegating, especially for high performance, for the reason they might have either non-trust, or they're so passionate about something that they would like to do it themselves.
Okay.
Can I just add
Yeah.
to that a little bit?
Yeah.
You know Dr. Santrup Mishra? Any rings a bell? He's the CEO and Group HR Director for Aditya Birla Group. And he said something very interesting, and I put that down on this piece of paper. What high performers don't realize is that they can't win every battle. So what happens is that in their desire to be so perfect and so correct and so up to it with everything, that they think that it just needs to be done, and therefore they fail to delegate more often than not, because they can't tolerate failure. And that is what leads to most problems, or more and more problems with high performers, because their inability to tolerate any failure, they become very internally focused, and therefore they think their team is there to do their bidding and not to collaborate with them. They're just to follow orders, which is as natural as all of us are humans, but there is a way of resolving this conflict by creating high performance teams, by understanding that if a person is so critical, then that person must be surrounded by people who can actually deliver as a team what is required. And therefore, at times, companies do this trial and error method of replacing teams after 6 months to see what clicks. And once they put a team together, it can either make or break them. But it is a definite problem. High performers don't delegate because they're in this race to win every battle, and that is something that we constantly grapple with. And in a company like NDTV, it is a big problem, because you have stars, journalists who become stars, and once you become stars, you act. So I have 10 Shah Rukh Khans to manage at the same time. Now, can you imagine that kind of a job? Do any one of you want to be in that job? So sometimes I'm thinking I'm individual HR manager and not company HR manager, but it's a real problem, and it does happen. So failure to delegate is a real issue, and many companies just do trial and error to see what they can do to make it work. And there's no hard and fast, or say a thumb rule that can be applied to fix it.
Thank you. I now want to open this forum to the audience. We'll take a couple of questions. Then at some point of view, I'll probably, come. There you are. 1, then 2. Yeah. Talk loud. We can hear, sure. Yeah.
We are, as Indians, we are all born and brought up on a diet of competition. taking from 10th standard up for sports, 12th and AI and then your CAT. And eventually when you come to a B school, you're still competing. You have this CGPA system where it's relative. If you don't outperform the other person, your CGPA goes down and your chances for a placement also goes down. Eventually when you do get placed into a company, you're not actually a manager, you're an entry-level management trainee. And there also there is competition to outdo the other person so that you get to a post of being a manager. Now you were talking about collaboration